Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Spindle TV. My name is Laney Shaughnessy. If you're just joining me for the first time tonight, I will be your host for the evening. And tonight we are going to discuss 3D modeling. Some of my viewers are just getting started with CNCs. Some of you guys and girls have been around for a long time. And a lot of times, like with our new customers at Digital Woodcarver and all, we tell them to crawl before they run. Meaning, kind of get started in the Vectric software, whether it be VCarve Desktop Pro or Aspire. Make your signs, V carving, pocket cuts, and things like that. And then, venture into 3D modeling because there's a few more steps and stuff to do. So what I would like to do is I would like to open up this class and start with understanding the basics of 3D modeling using some of the Clipart that comes with the software, as well as importing models, how to import 3D models and files, and going through that orientation process. Not orientation like getting started orientation. I'm talking like how to orientate a model that you import in. Go through that orientation window, and then we're going to once we have that understanding and all, then we're going to step it up and we're going to build some models. We're going to do some 3D modeling and we're going to do some assembly working between we're going to go kind of the introduction in VCarve Pro just so everybody knows what's going on, and then I'm going to switch over to Aspire and talk a little bit about the Aspire tools, and we're going to do a little bit of assembly in there as well. And end up with a finished product. So if you are very familiar with 3D modeling and everything, great. Stick with us. There might be something that you could pick up. But if you're not familiar with 3D modeling and you're kind of wanting to venture into it, this may just be the class for you. But I hope everybody sticks around and we have a good time tonight. And of course, by all means, I do have a chat area here where I can see you guys and girls communicating with one another. Definitely, ask questions and I'll be happy to answer them along the way. That being said, let's go ahead and get into the Vectric software and we'll get started. So let's jump over to camera 3. That's my camera over there. And let's get VCarve Pro started. Wonderful. And let's get me down. Let's go lower left. Hello, down here in the corner. How you doing? And we'll get started. Now, if you're watching for the first time and you haven't watched over the last couple of weeks, definitely if you're watching on YouTube, down at the bottom of your YouTube screen window, there should be like a little gear icon. That's your settings for your viewing pleasure. Click on that and it might by default have a low resolution. Turn that resolution up 1080p, get a higher resolution that you can handle, so that everything that you're seeing on the screen is not blurry for you, that you can see everything and all that wonderful stuff. So we are here in the Vectric VCarve Pro software. Now the things that I'm going to be talking about to begin with can be done in Desktop Pro and Aspire. And we're going to kind of do a little bit of model building and assembly and kind of understand what the relationship is between two components, how we can add, subtract, merge high, merge low, things like that, how we can bring models together to create a scenery, and then also we'll talk about clipping and stuff. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to create a new file here, and in this file I'm going to go a pretty decent size. I'll go 20 inches long, and let's go 15 wide. Let's go 24 by 15. And I'm going to go, what do I want to do? I want to go, we'll stick with 3/4 inches thick to begin with. Now, by default, when we are doing a job setup, by default, we have 3 model resolution options. We have standard, high, and very high in our job setup. Now this plays a role because in the 3D view of our project where we're going to see our models, If we're in a low resolution, that pixelation that may occur in that model, that's going to translate to the quality of the actual finished cut. Okay, so we want to be mindful of that and everything. So either choose a very high resolution, that's what I recommend being your default, or you can even also get into higher resolutions, which generally aren't 100% necessary unless you're building models, which we'll talk about when we get in the Aspire. But to see those additional options when you go in to set up a job, when you're at your home screen here in Vectric, hold your Shift key down when you click on Create a New File. And let's go back to our 24 by 15 by 3/4. And down here in my model resolution, you'll see we have two additional options. We have an extremely high resolution and a maximum resolution. And you'll notice that there's a little in parentheses, is that parentheses? Yeah, parentheses, I think it is. But it'll say like 7 times slower, 3 times slower, fastest, and in this case 20 times slower. That has nothing to do with the carving time. That more so reflects the resolution as far as when it's building those 3D images or showing that 3D image in there, how long it takes it to create that image. So in our standard resolution, which is the fastest, it's a very low resolution, 2 million pixels, I believe, 1 million pixels. It is faster than in the extreme, which is 8 million pixels. It'll take 20 times longer to create it. Okay, so I'm going to go with the extreme here. I'm not building any models, but still I'm going to kind of create a high resolution. Your 7 times, your very high 7 times slower option is a decent option for just, you know, general 3D modeling and stuff. So you don't have to get too hung up with going extreme or maximum things. Maximum, you'll very, very, very seldom find a reason for that. With that being said, and for those of you that are enduring all these heavy storms and cold weather and everything, man, I hope you're safe, right? That's all I can say. I hope you're safe. I was going to say I wish I were there with you, but that would be an untruth. And I don't want to do any untruths to you guys and girls because I do not wish I were there with you. But be safe, of course, especially if you're out on the roads in these kind of conditions. All right, let's go ahead and in my project here, I want to go ahead and start assembling models. Now, in our Clipart tab, that's another term for where all of our 3D model components, a component and a 3D model, kind of the same thing, are stored. But also we have additional clip art that comes with the Vectric software, such as 2D vectors. We've got some game layouts, and we've got molding profiles and things like that. So all of that kind of gets bundled into our Clipart tab with all of our tools and stuff. Now, you may or may not have purchased models from a website like Design and Make or Etsy or eBay or something like that. We'll get into importing third-party model files in a moment, those STLs and OBJs and things. But by default, Vectric models are .v3m. And if you've never purchased a model off of a website like Design and Make, that's owned by Vectric, it's kind of a sister company of Vectric and all. If you've never purchased a model from there, when you do purchase models, it gives you options. It says, do you want to, what type of file do you want? V3M, STL, or I believe OBJ is even an option. And if you're buying from Design and Make, or if at any time it gives you the option of a .v3m, that's what you're going to want, especially if you have desktop and pro. Desktop and pro, I can only import one third-party model file into my design or project. A third-party model file would be like a STL, OBJ, .x, 3ds, things like that. But .v3m, those are native to the Vectric software, and so I can import multiple V3M files into my project, even if I have desktop and pro. Now with Aspire, we have a little bit few more benefits. We can import multiple third-party model files and also other file types as well. So we have a little bit of benefit with Aspire and things, but I'm working in Pro, so all the models and assemblies that I purchased from Pro and things, those are .v3m files. And so in Design and Make, I have some different model assemblies that create, you know, different scenes or sceneries and things like that. And you know, some of the scenes and stuff, we want to bring in those models and kind of combine them together and create them together and all. So let's go ahead and let's start off with a basic scene. I'm going to drag and drop this lake scene in here, and I'm going to size it up across my board. Okay, that's a little too much there, Lainey. Hold on a second. Let me size that back down a little bit. Let's get that. Let's get that size down just a little bit. I'm going to go right about there. And let's get it centered. So I'm going to go into my drawing tab and align to the center of my material. And I'd like a little bit of a border, a little bit of an edge around my project and all. So let's go ahead and, now that I'm centered, I'm going to hold my shift key down to keep it centered, and I'm going to scale this down a little bit so that I have a little bit of a boundary around here. Now if you don't want to eyeball your boundary, no problem. Let's go into the drawing tools. Let's take a rectangle tool, and I'm going to click I'm going to snap my mouse to this corner here and hold down my left mouse button, and I'm going to drag a rectangle to this corner. So I've outlined my entire board with this rectangle, making sure I have square corners and all. And now I'm going to open up the offset tool, and I'm going to offset inward about, let's go with a 3/4 inch border all the way around. And I'll create that offset. Let's go 1 inch. Let's undo that. Control Z to undo. Let's go 1 inch and create that offset all the way around. So now I'll have that kind of border to work off of and stuff. So now that I have that, I can go ahead and size this up. Now, the one great thing about the newer Vectric software, I believe it started in version 10, where we have clipping and stuff. So I'm going to move this up to right about here, and I like it in that position. And I'm going to go back to my alignment tool and just align left to right, make sure it's centered there. But I could, you know, if there might be a certain scene that I want, or a certain part of this scene, I might not want, you know, a lot of this. I might want just mostly the river or something. Well, I can size this model up, you know, to where it's kind of a majority of the river is in there, kind of taking up most of my scene. And I have in my modeling tab down here, my component tree where this model is, the level that it's on, I can turn on clipping. And so if I select a vector, and I'll use this border, I can come in, and with that vector selected, I can turn clipping or apply clipping to that. And what it will do is it will clip off whatever's outside of that vector. So I can cut off what I don't want, keep what I want. I can even freehand draw outlines of the areas that I want and clip everything else away, right? So it's pretty cool that we can do that. Let's make sure that I don't have any questions so far. Good. If you have any questions, just ask. So what I've done here is I've got my boundary where I want my 1 inch border, and I did scale up so I could get more of that river and stuff, kind of bring the scene closer, if you will, you know, and I just used the clipping to get rid of everything else that's on the outside of it. Okay. Now that that level has clipping associated to it, I don't want to clip everything that I'm bringing in. So what I'm going to do is right click and insert a new level. This is like a layer when you're working with the 2D designs. It's like a bunch of translucent stacks of paper on top of each other with different components on each one. But when we look at it as a whole, we can see the whole design. And we can turn those layers on or off just like we can turn levels on or off by checking or unchecking them. So I'm going to highlight my next level here, level 2, and that'll be the level when I bring in these other components and stuff. So let's go back to our Clipart tab here, and let's grab this wavy end right here, this wavy end on this board, and let's bring that in. And I'm going to size this up. Here. And I'm going to bring it here, but I want to rotate it. I'm going to rotate it. So I'm going to bring it in and I want to rotate it. So I'm going to hit the F9 key on my keyboard. Not F9, sorry. The number 9 key on my keyboard. And I'm just going to rotate this counterclockwise. The number 0 key is clockwise, but I'm just going to rotate this around. Basically, I hit the F9 key 4 times, and we'll get that there. Now, of course, I'm going to size it down a little bit. I don't need it so big. But what I want to make sure of is when I size it down, that it covers the lower part of my model, my lake scene, that it covers the lower part of my model and everything, so that when I'm looking at this, and you see how it combines, we'll talk about combine modes in a minute, but I want this to be kind of, I want the lake scene kind of be in the background, and I want this kind of raised up. We're going to change the thickness and all that stuff in just a moment. Let's now, I'll split the view. So we should be able to see the upper and lower view here and things on what's going on. But notice now that I brought this in, let's go back to our modeling tab, and on our tile here, that wavy tile is what it's called, I'm going to click on the black wrench and I'm going to go into the properties, and I have a shape height right now currently of 1.26 inches. Well, number one, my board's only 3/4 of an inch thick, so can't have that. Let's go ahead and bring that down a bit. I'm going to go just a ½ inch there, or I might even go a full 3/4, but let's go a half because I want some kind of recess. I want my frame, and then I want this model to be kind of recessed back a little bit. Okay. Now, notice how the models, let's go back into a full screen view of this. Notice how my upper model here, if I come in and let's deselect that. If I tilt this a little bit, notice how my lake scene model kind of overflowed the model that I just added in. And that's how they combine, right? That's called an add mode. In add mode, you guys and girls who have been with me for a long time know that when we take something and when we add one model to another, it's like taking a sheet, a physical bed sheet, and draping it over a car or another object. That sheet is going to form whatever object is underneath it, and that's exactly what's happening with the lake scene here. It is draping over that other model, and I don't want that. I want the two models to merge together. So what I want to make sure of is that my level 1 or my lake scene, my level 1, I'm going to do the level, instead of being an add mode, let me see if my head's in the way here. It's not. I want to change that combine mode to a merge. Okay, so that means that it'll merge with whatever's it's going to be with. And the same thing with my level 2. I want that to merge also. Okay, and once I merge those, you'll see now that everything is now blending together. Okay, cool. Hey, Crystal M and Ronald and everybody that popped in. And again, welcome everybody. Thanks for all joining and hanging out with me. So now we have a model that is merged together. It's blending together with one another. So I'm happy with that. Now, notice that my top of my trees here got trimmed a little bit, and I'm fine with that because it's in the border, but I may want to bring that down a little bit to get the points of those trees in there. Let's take a look at our 2D view And you can see that the point of that one tree is outside of that clipping border, right? That border that we clipped to. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take this and I'm going to hold down my shift key and I'm going to select the other component as well. And I'm just going to use my down arrow key, and I could use my mouse to drag them down and everything, but I'm just using the down arrow key, and I'm going to just bump them down. Okay, and probably should have drugged with my mouse, because every time you bump it down, it has to regenerate before you can make your next move and all that stuff. But we're almost there. One more time. There we go. Now, when I did that, that has brought that model out of the clipping zone. You know, everything outside of that zone on that level 1 is getting clipped away. So it brought it out of there, and you know, now I can see the top of that little tree and stuff. Now, mind you, my outside range here, this guy here, he's also, I'd like him to be clipped away too with my border, because I'd like a frame all the way around. So I got to decide, okay, do I, since he is going to be in there, maybe I just need to move him down to the clipping level. Well, let's drag them both down there. The level 1 that's got the clipping on it, so that way they're cut off all the way around as well. Yeah, because I want, you know, when this gets cut, I want my wood to have a frame around it, if you will. I can't physically build that frame with a model or anything. If I was in Aspire, I could, but now I'm just using the clipping. Okay, so now that we have that, let's go ahead and let's grab from our Clipart, let's grab our third model here, and let's drag and drop him on the board, or her, it could be a her. Okay. Sorry. If any of you are trying to call me, I can't accept calls right now because I'm in a class. Okay. So now I brought in this other gentleman here, my little fly fisherman here. Let's go back to our modeling tabs. And notice that he is kind of hiding in the woods a little bit there. I mean, if we zoom in, you can see a little bit of red and a little bit of green. Now the red means that my model is selected. The green outline is telling me that part of my model is obstructed by another model, right? It's merged and it's inside of that other model. So what I need to do with him is I need to go into the properties and I need to give him a little bit of base height. I got to bring him out. So I have two options, shape height and base height. Now, shape height is going to extrude the shape and kind of puff it up or extrude the shape. Base height is just going to add some material underneath it, right? So in this case, I want to do a little base height. And so I'm going to come up and bring up a little under 1/8 of an inch. And as I bring up that base height, you can start to see more and more of him start to come exposed. So let's go a little bit more. Let's go around 1/4, 0.24. And what I'm looking for is, you know, to bring him out. Now, as I scale this model, because I'm going to make him bigger, because he's going to be in the forefront. He or she could be a fisherwoman as well. But this model is going to be in the forefront, so I want it larger. Everything closer up is bigger. Everything further away is smaller. So as I scale him up, it's going to scale not only the X and Y, but also the Z as well. So if I come in here and select my fisherman, I can size, let me get this straight on so I can see everything. There we go. And I'm going to hold down my shift key and kind of scale him up. And so as I'm scaling him or her, trying to be politically right here, you'll notice now he's getting thicker too, you know. If you look, we're about 0.6 and all. So now he's really standing out. So I may not need as much base height as I had before. So let's reduce some of the base height because the model got thicker as I scaled him up. And it's definitely him. He's got a mustache. But as I bring that down, notice he starts to get lost in the trees, right? Starts to get lost in the trees. Well, now I have some decisions to make. Do I add a little tilt to the model, like sticking a wedge under that model? Do I wedge it up and tilt it up? Do I do a little bit of fading so the model blends and disappears into another model? Or do I just kind of give it a little bit more base height and then do some tilting and fading, right? So we got to figure out our combine method. And so in the properties here, what I'm going to do is, you see this blue box right at the bottom here of the, let's see if we can zoom in a little bit. You see this blue box right here? This box is similar to this box here. And if I click on it, it will open up my properties tab in this window. And since I'm kind of primarily working in the 3D view, I want to work with the properties in this 3D window. So I'm going to close this window because I've got this one open now. And now I can start to kind of manipulate and start to kind of mess around with things. So first of all, I am going to bring my model base up to 1/4 of an inch, 0.25. And just kind of bring it out just a little bit. And I've got the back side of him is pretty good here. It's just kind of the front side right at the front of his face and his fishing pole and all that. So now I can start to do a little bit of tilt. Okay, a little bit of tilt. And so let's add a tilt here. Now a tilt is like sticking a wedge. Okay, a wedge under the model. And wherever I stick that wedge, there's a thin part of the wedge and a thick part of that wedge. Well, when I have the hiccup, sorry. When I click on the set button, I get a little anchor here with a number 1 next to it on my mouse. And that means it's my first click. So wherever you click first, that's going to be the thin part of the wedge. Once you do that first click, and I want the thin part of the wedge over here on the back side of him. Now my anchor changes and I have a number 2 next to it. So this is my second click. This is going to be the thick part of the wedge. So I want to kind of be out here on the outside of the model, and I want to just click that second part. And now I can adjust the degrees of that wedge, that tilt. So let's go ahead and let's go 1.2 degrees, not very much to begin with. And you can start to see he's lifting up more and more. And let's go 1.4, let's go 1.6. And we're starting to look good there. Okay, and let me get him into position where I finally want him. Let me move him down a bit. And let me get him out in the water just a little bit more. Okay, now looking at this, I'm still getting cut off on the nose, but I've got to be careful on how much tilt and fade that I do, because of the simple fact of, if we look at the fishing line here, if I come in and tilt this board a bit, you can see my fishing line is getting quite tall and it's really skinny. Okay, so the more meat that I add to it, the less kind of stable that model's going to be. So I've really got to kind of start figuring some things out. So what I'm going to do actually is on my lake scene, I'm going to go into the properties of that lake scene. I'm going to see exactly how thick that lake scene is, and it's a 1/2 inch thick. I don't need it that thick. So I'm going to go ahead and just reduce this down to about 0.4. Oops, too many decimal points there. 0.4. And I'm going to bring that Z height down a little bit on that shape height. so that now my object is standing up, above, and I don't have to give it too much more tilt or fade. Now, one of the great things, one of the good things with Aspire is we have a tool that allows us to add some draft to a model, some angle. Instead of that straight skinny narrow piece, we could add a little bit of base meat, but we don't have that feature in Desktop or Pro, so we gotta be careful and deal with what we've got in front of us accordingly. So bringing that down to 0.4 brought my model out some more. I still need to do a little bit of fading. I haven't done any fading yet to have him disappear into this ledge here. But the one thing that I need to really kind of think about is do I want this thin piece of material sticking that high up? If I tilt this, you can see how by sticking that wedge under there, that tilt, I've really tilted it up high, and I've got a lot of base meat under that model. So we got to start kind of adjusting and accordingly and everything. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to click back on this blue tab here to bring the properties back up for my fisherman. And I'm going to come in, bear with me a second. Let's get back on our fisherman. Make sure it's the one that's selected so I can go in the properties of him. And now that I've reduced that background a little bit by 0.4, I'm going to bring down my tilt a bit. So let's bring down that tilt a little bit. Let's go 0.08 and let's see if we lose anything within our trees and stuff. So no, we didn't. We still have our face. Let's get this kind of where we can all see it, so by reducing that tilt, I haven't lost anything. Let's go ahead and reduce that tilt a little bit more, because that's going to help reduce some of that base meat that's under the fly rod line. So let's bring that down a little bit, and I'm going to go 0.4. And now I'm going to take the roller wheel on my mouse, and I'm going to start to change that kind of one by one. Will it let me with my mouse? No. Okay, so the roller wheel won't work with my mouse too much. Let's bring that down to no tilt. Okay, so now I'm at a 0 tilt, and my model is still well above the trees and everything. Nothing's getting lost or hidden. So I can actually, I'm just going to turn the tilt off. I didn't need it after all. I just needed to go back and reduce my background a little bit. Okay. All right. So now with that being said, can I reduce some of the base height? Can I bring some of the base height in and still maintain my fisherman? And he's kind of the one I'm really concentrating on because he's in the forefront. He's got to be above everything else. So let's bring that down. I'm going to bring it down to about 530 seconds. And can't do that. You see, once I do that, now I've lost his face and his arm, right? So I got to kind of find that happy spot where, let's go 0.18, a little under 3/16. Still not much. So I think I'm going to have to keep him right around a quarter. Let's go 0.21. Nope. All right. So his base height is going to have to be up based on everything as it stands right now. So we are going to have to bring him up and get him up there. And that's fine. We can deal with that. Now I have the issue of his legs. I need his legs to be blended in to this base that's underneath. Okay? And with that is a fade. I'm going to have him fade into, I don't want to tilt him. I don't want to bring out his head. I don't want to put a wedge in there and tilt it. I just want him to start to fade away into that other model. All right, so let's go ahead and let's click on our fade. Now this one's a little bit different. When I click my first time, it's the area that I want to keep, and my second click is what I want to fade into. So I'm going to click up here by his head, 1, And then I'm going to come down here by his legs, 2. And by default, my fading is going to kick to 50%, right? And I may not need that 50%, but by default, it jumps into 50%. So I'm going to reduce that down to about 25%, and then I'll work from there. What I want is I just want him blending into the top of this ridge. And just right there at 25%, his leg is just coming out of that top lip down here. So let's go ahead and bring that up just a little bit. So let's go 28%. I just want them right, to fade away into that surface. Oh, a little bit more. I think we're going to be at 30, and that should do us. There we go. And once again, I just want him to fade right at that top edge. Okay. All right. So we have just successfully combined some model components together. And now I want to step away from models and I want to add some text in here, right? Now I'm adding a 2D component to my 3D design so far, right? So, yes, Joseph, to interrupt, Joseph Friendly, are you going to discuss zero planes and how they work? Yes, I surely will. We'll get into that in just a moment. With the model here, as a matter of fact, let's stick with this and talk about zero plane for a minute. Then we'll move into the text. So on my model here, my border is a 1-inch border all the way around. And here, and the back or the base of this model, there's nothing. So when this 3D design starts to carve, it's carving from my 3/4 of an inch down, down, down to create the models in the trees. While when it starts to carve this area in here, there's nothing there, right? So by adding a zero plane, I'm adding a layer of material that has a 0 shape height. So if I click on that and add the zero plane in there, I'm filling in this area with material. Okay, so if we turn this to the side, not that far, let's tilt it back here. I've basically added some material in here that is, number one, I need to move it down to the clipping layer because I want it clipped away as well. I still want my wood border around, right? But now I've added some material in the background. Now I'm going to add a little bit of meat. Now, keep in mind, my board is going to be 3/4 of an inch thick. My model, when it's all said and done, may only be 5/8 of an inch thick. That means I've still got an 1/8 inch of meat underneath that model. I'm not going to physically cut through my table, right? But what if my model was 3/4 of an inch thick? Then at those trees, it's going to cut through into my wasteboard table and there's going to be a big hole in the background. I'll never forget a customer was doing a long project. It was the Last Supper. And the background behind the table and all the apostles and Jesus and everything, the background had an opening. There was no zero plane or anything there. Beautiful piece of material, all thick model and everything. As it carved through, everything was looking great, but when it got to the background, it milled it all away. So there was just a big old hole you could see through. You could see all the model and everything was great here, but the top portion around their heads and everything was nothing. Gone, milled away. Because there was no zero plane there, no kind of material there, because the model was just as thick. Now this particular zero plane, if we open up the properties tool, this particular zero plane has no base height. And let's spin this thing around so we can kind of see up here. on the kind of the top side and all. Spin around, get right there. We're looking at it upside down now. And if I give my zero plane some base height, let's go 1/8 of an inch, I've got to be mindful of what that base height is going to do. Is it going to cover up any of my model? How is it blending? Is it just kind of pushing the model up? What's happening? Well, what it did was that zero plane pushed everything up. Now you can see that my, by that 1/8 of an inch, now you can see my fisherman is buried back in there again, right? So I may want my zero plane to merge with the other model. Okay, so let's change that. Okay, so I get my model back, but now it's merged with the model and it's cut out everything. There's the lake is gone, the ripples in the water, because it's just too thick, right? So let's bring that down to 1/16 of an inch. Okay, we're starting to get some of our ripple back. Let's go a 30-second. 0.30125. And for those of you that don't know decimals and fractions and all that, you can add in, you can just type in the fraction and just hit the equal key on your keyboard and it'll do the fraction to decimal conversion for you. Okay. All right. So looking at this, even at a 30-second, and I do want to have some base there and everything, right? So it's covering up my mountains. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my mountains or my lake scene. And I'm just going to increase that lake scene by the same 30-second, just to get it kind of back on top. And now I have some material behind there that if my model was 3/4 of an inch thick, you know, I've got some background wood, right? So I'll at least have a 32nd inch of material, right? But we don't want that. We want to carve our material out of, you know, as thick as possible. Now I've raised my lake scene up that 32nd, you know, so that it's not, you know, obscured by that zero plane. But now that means I need to raise up my wavy end. That's that board underneath by the same 32nd, 0.3125. Got to kind of accommodate for that zero plane. And then I'm going to also my fisherman as well. So let's add in, I'm going to hit plus 0.03125 and hit the equal sign. So I'm just adding that 32nd to that 1/4 of an inch. Okay, to bring him up here. All right. And so now we're kind of back where we were, but now we have some material back there. We don't have just a void or a hole or anything. So that's one use for the zero plane. Okay. Let's come in and turn this all off for a minute because we're going to start doing our text now. But let me show you the second use for a zero plane. Let's say that I'm working with a piece of Clipart that is in a dish or a dome. A dish, to be more specific. Let's go ahead and let's grab this light bulb here. Okay, and let's go back in here and let's create a new level. Insert a new level, and let's throw that light bulb back over there and turn level 2 back off so we don't have our fisherman fishing for a light bulb. He's got a bright idea. That's what he's got. All right, so here we go. We have a dish here that we have no material around it, right? And so if I were carving this model and I let my bit go beyond the model, you know, boundary for whatever reason, it's going to go over and down. It's going to plunge. So when it's carving, it's going to go over and down. So if we were to create a toolpath on this, just as an example, let's create a finish cut toolpath on this. I'm going to use, let's bring this up and click OK. I'm going to use the 1/8 inch tapered ball nose. 1/8 inch tapered ball nose. Where are you hiding at? Right here. And I'm going to use the model as the boundary. Okay, but I want to kind of blend it. At least I think that's what I'm doing, right? I want to kind of blend it. So I'm going to let the bit go past the model by 1/8 of an inch. Okay, and let's go ahead and calculate that toolpath. All right, so now in our toolpath here, when we are carving, let's preview that cut. Okay. So let's go back into here and look at this. So the model was able to go up and beyond, right? And I didn't necessarily need the zero plane, but in some instances, let's close out of this so we can go back to our model. Depending on how things merge and all that stuff, that could have been disastrous for me. So let's say that, let's bring that back over. And let's go 0.18 beyond the boundary, allowing that bit to go over the boundary and everything. Okay, it's still holding up, so I don't need the zero plane, so that's good, and everything, which is good. But in some instances, depending on the model and all, it could actually start carving down that model, right? And I don't want that. I don't want take any chance of that. So I want to add in a zero plane. Let's grab a zero plane here. And I want to fill that in with material, okay? So now that I have that zero plane, now I can position my model within that zero plane. I may want that model down a little bit, so it kind of creates that kind of lip or what have you. I may want it up, which in this case I always want the model at the top. But I also may have a 2D model where there's two-sided, and I need a zero plane in the middle. I need to create some meat in the middle. So a zero plane could be added in between side 1 and 2 and given some meat, so I have a two-sided model. I might want to plump it up and create some meat without having to add base height to each of my models. So with the zero plane, it basically, all it does is it adds a surface of material with a zero height, and we can utilize that to kind of fill in the areas, especially when we're doing something that doesn't have any background around it, and we need that so the model doesn't cut beyond. And the one thing that we need to be mindful of is if we do add a zero plane, it is part of the 3D model. Meaning if I calculate this using the model as the boundary, now that that zero plane's in, it's carving the whole zero plane and everything. And this is going to take a minute to calculate, but we don't want that either. There's no sense in our ball nose bit milling all of this. So if you are going to use a zero plane, let me hit stop on this. If you are going to use a zero plane, you need to create a boundary around your component Okay. And at the very least in your toolpath, use that selected vector as the boundary. Otherwise, your bit's going to carve that whole surface because the zero plane is considered a model. So the zero plane adds that surface layer in so we can see that nice smooth transition here. Between two models, it creates that base meat that we might need to, for our top and bottom sides. And in the case of our other project, it creates a background so I don't have just a gaping hole back there if my model happens to be the same thickness as my material. And that is pretty much it. If we look at the get help on this tool, which is the interactive manual, and we go down to our modeling and we click on our zero plane, basically all it says here is it creates a component that is the size of the job with zero height, right? That's all the information we get about it. And it is doing exactly that. It's just creating a surface plane of material with zero height. We can give it more height. We can blend or merge and all. And in this case, let's turn that off. In our fisherman scene, turn my fisherman back on. We've used the zero plane to give us some kind of background beyond the trees. Some kind of background beyond the trees, so that way it's just not a gaping hole, right? And I don't think my model, we'll look at the size of my model here in a minute, but I don't think it's 3/4 of an inch thick yet. That's how thick my material is. Otherwise, in my material setup, if it is too thick, I'm going to get an error code. So let's see here. Yeah, error. So it's just above 3/4. So I'm going to go ahead and set my exact height to 0.74. I'm going to click apply. So that little bit, and now we can close that tool. And with that extra 0.010 of an inch I gave myself, I wanted at the top of the model, I want it to get skimmed away. Okay. Now, because my model is 0.74, right? That's from the very tip top to the very bottom of that surface plane. All of those things stacked together, it's 0.74. That 30-second right there is giving me a 30-second, right? That's all I've got. Now I could add the additional 0.010 to the bottom of that 30-second and get 0.04, 125, just for some little extra meat there or what have you. But now I'm not going to carve through my material because I do have a little something, but that might be too thin. So does that mean if this is my model and this is my size, do I want to go ahead and just carve out of a 1-inch thick material, 7/8 or something like that? Or do I want to reduce the model thickness a little bit more? And in my case, I'm going to stick with 3/4. And I'm going to resize the model down some, but I have to understand, the more I resize the model, the more detail I sacrifice. Okay? As that model gets smaller, I'm sacrificing detail. So I have to choose detail or a bigger piece of wood. Detail or a piece of wood. I'm going to go ahead and size this down to 0.625 because having that little 32nd inch skin back there just doesn't give me any confidence whatsoever. And it's too thin, right? It's not realistic. Let's close this tool. And now I'm going to take all that extra meat and put behind my material. Behind my model. So now I'm comfortable. I have at least 1/8 of an inch, right, of model material there when this model gets cut. So and 1/8 I'm fine with. 32nd I'm not. I don't know if that answers your question about a zero plane, but that's all it does. It gives you a surface plane the size of your material. With zero height, you can add height to it to whatever meets your needs. And it's generally for something like this, in this case, the kind of the far background, or splitting two models and getting some base height in between for a two-sided project, or on a dish or a dome, adding that surface layer for that dish and dome. Okay, so that's really what it's used for. All right, let's get on to it in our design now. So we got our design laid out here and everything. I'd like to add some text here. And so I'm going to go in and go into the 2D view. And I'm going to, Grandpa, tell me about the good old days. Let's see here. Let's go with a normal looking text. I don't need something fancy like that. Let's go with a, that's too square. Bear with me a second here. And let's get this size down a little bit more appropriate. I don't need all capital letters. Grandpa. Hold on, let me learn how to spell. It's not how you spell it. Grandpa. I was saying grandpa. That's my southern accent kicking in there. Let's go ahead and come in here. I want something a little bit softer. That might be too soft. I want something that's a little bit. Let's go with a monotype Corsiva. That's always a good fallback, monotype Corsiva. Let's go down to the M's. Still not there, still not there. There we go. All right, let's throw that up here. And let's add some more text in here. All right, let's bring this down to an appropriate size. And let's see. Now that's not true. You're probably sitting there watching this going, well, wait a minute. I am the world's best fisherman. But in my eyes, my grandpa taught me how to fly fish. He taught me how to fish. He bought me my first fly rod, all true stories. And I still have it to this day. The one he bought me when I was a wee lad. I have his original fly rod that he taught me on that was handed down to me and all that wonderful jazz. So he's the world's best fisherman in my eyes. All right, let's get this laid out. And let's zoom out so we can see what we're looking at here. Center up there, boy. There we go. And that will be fine. Okay, so now I've got my design and I'm ready to do some toolpathing. Okay, I'm ready to do some toolpathing. Now I used this boundary as my clipping boundary here. I'm also going to select it as a vector boundary as well, because I kind of want to stay within this boundary. Now, if I use the model as the boundary, since it is clipped, that's the boundary, right? But it's kind of my backup. So I'm going to go in here with a 3D rough cut, and I'm going to use a 1/4 inch end mill, and I'm going to use my selected vector as a boundary. And I'm going to calculate this cut. Now this cut is going to be a selected vector, 1/4 inch end mill. I'm going to leave 40 thousandths of an inch of skin of material here. I am going to do a Z-level raster. Now, you know, Z-level raster and 3D raster. So a 3D raster is literally where my end mill would be doing the 3D cut. you know, leaving whatever allowance that I have there, like that 40 thousandths. And it's, some people like it. I have never found a good reason that I should do a 3D raster. The Z-level raster is my end mill, my workhorse, just hogging away the waste material to get it out of there so my ball nose bit can do what it's got to do. There's no sense in my end mill doing the 3D cut and then my ball nose coming back and doing the 3D cut as well. It's just a waste of time. And that, if I did this, and I'll show you the time difference between the two, I'm going to do the Z-level raster calculation first. So let's calculate that toolpath as just a Z-level raster where my bit is coming down, taking steps down, and hogging away the waste material. So let's reset this and get rid of that light bulb, and let's preview that cut. And so my end mill is taking, you know, 1/8 of an inch per pass, and it's just literally going to hog away the waste material where it needs to go away, leaving that 40 thousandths of an inch skin between the rough cut and my model. I don't want that bit coming that close to my model. So it's just literally hogging away that waste material, right? Now let's calculate that same tool path with the 3D raster cut. Same parameters, but we're doing a 3D raster. Let's calculate that again. And oops, hold on. Make sure, let's do it right. Selected vector, is my vector selected? It is. All right, 3D raster. Selected vector is back. Okay, yep, that's right. Let's reset that preview. Let's reset that preview and preview that visible toolpath. So my rough cut is literally doing the 3D cut, leaving that 40 thousandths of an inch skin. It's going to still take passes, but it's literally doing the 3D cut, you know, and in my humble, honest opinion, I don't know if my opinion means anything, but it's such a waste of time. It really, really is. Because my ball nose bit's going to be doing all that. I just need to hog away all the waste material. I do not need my end mill coming in and doing all of that work. But we're going to look at the times difference between the two, just so we can get a general idea, so you can kind of get an understanding and everything. So let it go through. I believe it is finished. All right, let's take a look at our times here. The normal roughing cut, 1 hour and 30 minutes. The 3D roughing cut, 3 hours and 26 minutes. So about 2 hours, give or take a few minutes, additional 2 hours additional time to do that. And I don't need that additional time in there. I don't need that additional time. All I need is my rough cut bit to hog away that waste material, and then my finished bit's going to come back and do the rest. Okay. Now, notice that on my other rough cut here, it did all of this area that was up here too. It brought it down that 1/4 of an inch or that 1/8 of an inch, whatever it is. And this one doesn't. It's just doing all the deep, heavy areas. It's hogging away those areas and all. If I were to reduce my pass depth, right now I'm taking 1/8 of an inch per pass. If I were to reduce my pass depth on my 1/4 inch bit, let's reduce that. I'm taking 0.2 per pass. If I were to reduce that down to, let's say, 1/8 of an inch per pass, or even a 1/16th, let's go 1/8, and click OK and calculate that. My end mill is going to, again, do exactly what that was doing, and it'll remove that. Let's preview the selected toolpath. Okay, it'll remove that extra, you know, material and everything for me. And it'll even take out more material. You'll see it's cutting out more and more around this fishman. It's kind of, you know, it's able to get into those smaller depths and stuff, so it's taking out more and more. So get more detail in there. Okay, now let that finish up. Okay, so now I have this model, and then my finish cut, my finish toolpath right here. It's going to use the same selected vector as the boundary. I'm not going to have a boundary offset on this. I am going to raster like a printer, back and forth, back and forth. I love cutting with the grain. I don't like the offset cut with the grain against the grain, with the grain against the grain. That gives me a lot of cleanup that I've got to do afterwards. I like cutting with the grain, rastering. And I'm rastering at a 0 angle along that x-axis. If I was rastering 90, it'd be along that y-axis. Now, that's true for my machine. It might be different from yours. 0 angle might be along your y and all that. But no, sorry. That's a false statement. 0 angle is along the x always. 90 is along the y. I want to go a 0 angle, and I'm going to calculate this. And I'm going to use my 1/8 inch tapered ball nose. If I want more detail out of my trees and stuff, then the 16th inch tapered ball nose is going to be the winner in this fight. But for right now, we'll just calculate it with the 1/8. And this will be kind of a basic understanding. Now, I want to show you, the last thing I want to show you this is, my bottom half of my model, or a big portion of the bottom part of my model, is flat, right? I don't necessarily need the ball nose bit flattening that area out. Why do I need it to do that flat area when my end mill can do that for me much quicker? So I'm going to, in just a moment, we're going to add an additional vector in here, and we're going to eliminate the ball nose bit having to do that flat area and just let our end mill take care of it. And that's optimizing our toolpath. Okay, so we want to optimize our cuts the best we can. There's no sense in our bits doing flat work, our ball nose bits doing flat work, when an end mill in a 2D fashion like a pocket cut can do it just as well, or I mean as well, but quicker, right? All right, while that is calculating, let me answer a question. You even work with accent signage systems and automatic braille tool with CNC. Did it work well for you if you did? You ever work with accent signage systems and automatic braille tools with CNC? Did it work for you? James Stewart, no, I never have. I've never worked with a braille system and all. But I've seen videos and stuff of signs and stuff being made with braille fonts and and things and all that, a braille tool. It's amazing, right? But no, I've never had the privilege of working with anything like that. As far as accent signage, are you talking about like Southern versus Northern accent, European accent, that type of accent? Or are you talking about accent like we have accented this board to bring out its beauty with this model? What kind of accent are you talking about? Because no, the answer is no to that question also. So I've never heard of an accent system signage. Now I type in an accent, y'all and you'ns and all that wonderful jazz when I'm making an appropriate sign for whatever demographic it's going to. You all, y'all, y'all some, mayonnaise. We're almost there on the calculation, so I'm giving you all a moment's rest to think about the mayonnaise one for a minute. All right. Fixing, all those wonderful words. Why is the 1-inch border so thin? It's not. What you're seeing right now is a preview of the model that I built. My 1-inch border is 3/4 of an inch thick. You're not seeing that border yet because we're not in the actual preview of the cut. We're looking at just the model that I designed, and of my whole material, that model has been clipped to that region right there. So all you're seeing is the 3D model in this view. So once my toolpath finishes calculating and we actually are previewing the toolpath cut, you'll see that my border is 3/4 of an inch thick all the way around. But you're not seeing that now because we're not in the finished cut preview. We are in the model preview. I'm looking at the model. So let's go ahead and take a look at that preview, and let's preview that selected toolpath. And let's pause that for a minute. I'm going to turn the quality, simulation quality down a bit. So it's still a decent quality, but it's a little bit faster. Okay. So that way we can kind of move along on this and we're not sitting here watching just previews and stuff. So as you can see, we're now in the toolpath preview looking at the toolpath cut, and my border, my 1-inch border, is a 3/4 inch border all the way around. Okay. All right. All right, let's create our last toolpath here, which is going to be the text. Now, this is a 2D toolpath on a 3D model, or within the same project as a 3D model, right? And technically it's this one's physically on the model. So what I need to make sure that I do is, I'm going to be starting at 0, top of my material, and I'm not going to have a flat depth on this. I'm going to be using a 60-degree V-bit from my arsenal of tools. No end mill for this. No end mill is needed for that. And I'm going to calculate this. Now, I'm calculating without taking one very important step for a reason. I'm calculating this to show you that when I go to preview this cut, nothing, right? Right? Because my 3D model carved away this top surface of the material here, right? So what I need to do is when I calculate this toolpath, I need to project it onto the 3D model, meaning that I need it to go down to that new surface plane that was created by the 3D model, and that is my 0 that I'm starting at. I need to start from that surface plane and cut to whatever depth it's going to cut to. Somebody could ask, well, can I just figure out what that depth is? 0.5424 is what it is from 3/4. Can I just add that cut depth, like that 1/4 of an inch, and start from there and all that? Yes, technically you could, but it would be best if you projected that whole toolpath down onto the 3D model and started from 0 from there. So when I project that toolpath, it's now bringing this surface plane right here, this surface that my model is at, that's my 0. So now when I carve, it's carving into that design, right? Okay. And so we want to project a 2D toolpath, like a pocket cut, profile cut, VCarve, things like that. We may have to project them down onto the 3D model to have it follow the contour of that model or go down to the level of that surface that model created and things. Okay. Now, let's take a close look. Let's go ahead and close out of the preview here, and let's see what we can do to optimize our cut. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this 3D level raster cut with my rough bit. I'm going to delete that. I just need my Z level raster. Oops, did I delete the wrong one? Let me see here. I bet you I deleted the wrong one. No, I did. I did good. Okay. Now, the one thing that I want to do is I want to optimize my toolpaths a little bit. I can get a little bit of a quicker time out of this because I can eliminate this flat area from my 3D cuts. And this will be the last thing we talk about, and then we're going to go build a model and have some fun. So stick around with me, guys and girls. We're about an hour and 10 minutes into this, and we're going to be moving on to some bigger and better things. But I just want to show how we combine models and all of those things. And it's the principles apply across all models. Tilt, fade, blend. Are we adding, subtracting, multiplying? You know, how are we blending these things together? All those principles apply with every model you work with, but it will vary depending on the model properties, right? So let's go ahead and let's look and see what we can do here. First thing I can do is I can select this model, and I can create come into my modeling tab over here, and I can create a vector boundary around it, right? I can create a boundary around it. And what that has done is, if we come out of here, it's created this vector boundary right here, and it created that boundary, and it even created it to my clipping, right? Not the whole thing, just the area that's being clipped. Okay, so it's created this vector boundary around here. And the one thing that I want to do now, this top part is curved, so I'm going to include that into the 3D model. But from this light point here on the model, from this light point on, that's all top surface and everything. You might not be able to see that transition, but it's darker, grayer, 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 and then it's kind of solid here, right at that high bright point there. You know, that's where that curve ends, and then it goes into that flat. So what I do want to do is I'm going to take the vector that I just drew, and I'm going to go, let's go back into the 2D tools for this. I'm going to go into node editing. Okay, and I'm going to select all of these top nodes here, and I'm going to bring my arrow key down. I'm going to use my down arrow key, and I'm bringing this curve down to, let's zoom in, just past that kind of white area of my model. If I click on my model here, I'm just past that white area into the flat area here. Okay. Now that I have that, now that I have that area there, that is going to be my pocket toolpath for my pocket cut, my 2D toolpath. But I need to create kind of a similar boundary opposite of this for the 3D cut, my selected vector for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here with this. I'm going to copy and paste this vector. So Control C, Control V, copy and paste. Control C for copy, Control V for paste. And I've literally just pasted a duplicate right on here, right? And let's move over to another layer so you can see what's happening. I'm going to take that copy that I made along with this vector here, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to copy them to a new layer. And I'll just call it layer 2 for right now. And I'm going to, let's make it red, and let's click OK. And up here, I'm going to turn layer 1 off. So all we see are those two vectors that I just moved over there, or copied over there, should I say. And I'm going to take my scissors here, and I'm going to trim away this lower level. So this top part is going to be my 3D boundary where I'm doing my 3D carving. And the lower part is going to be my pocket cut. Okay, let's see how this would work. First thing I need to do is I need to look at my job setup for a moment. And on my job setup, I'm working off the machine bed. That means I'm touching off on my wasteboard. So for me, when I hover my mouse over this area right here, and you see down at the bottom, right at the bottom, these numbers that are down here at the bottom of the screen, very hard to see, but you might be able to see them. But my mouse over that spot is showing me that it's 0.5424. Now from the top of my board, it's not a ½ inch down, right? it's only about 0.21 inches down. I have to take my 3/4 inch board because I'm working from my 0 is at the machine bed at the bottom of the board, right? So 3/4 is the top of my board in this scenario. So I got to subtract 0.5424 from 3/4, and that'll give me my depth, how deep that is. So I got to just simply come in here and I'm at on my flat area here. Let's go in here, my flat area here, 0.5424. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a pocket cut. The cut depth is going to be 0.75 minus 0.5424 equals. So my cut depth for this pocket is going to be 0.2076. That's going to cut that flat area down to the finished flat area. I'm going to use a 1/4 inch end mill for that. Well enough. And I'm going to calculate that toolpath. Oops. Got to select the vector. Let's select the vector. And make sure you select the right one. And let's calculate that toolpath. All right. So on my pocket cut, I don't want to do an offset. We talked about my liking and disliking of offset. I want to do a raster cut with the grain back and forth. Okay. And I want it to clear that area out and cut it down to its final dimension. Done. My rough cut for my 3D cut doesn't have to deal with it now, and my ball nose bit for my finished cut doesn't have to deal with it now. It's done. So now all I need to do is select my upper vector that I've trimmed, and on my 3D cut here, select my upper vector. I'm still using the selected vector as the boundary, but it's now that new vector, that top part. So I'm going to calculate that. For the rough cut. Okay, so you can see it's just doing that top part there. And I'm going to do the same thing for my finish cut. Select that top vector. Now if you can't see that vector going, hey, which one am I selecting and all, it's on layer 2, right? So I can turn this off, what was on layer 2. If I would have left it, if I wouldn't have put it back on layer 1, if I would have left it on layer 2, I could just select it. I don't need the model physically on the screen at that moment. But I can see the pink dotted line. You might not be able to on the screen, but I do have that pink vector selected. So let's go ahead and select that. And let that calculate. And while that calculates, don't forget to save often. So we'll do that next. Thanks, Michael, for that. Mike Pearson. Nice sign. Thank you, Sylvia. Michael's on it. Save and saved on. Yes. So as soon as this finishes calculating, I will save because it won't let me. I don't think it'll let me do it. Yeah, I can't do anything while it's calculating. So we'll save. And then we're going to take and jump into Aspire, and we're going to import a 3D model. And the same import and orientation that we're going to be doing can be done in Desktop and Pro as well. Okay, so the way we import a model, orientate it, for our design, will apply to Desktop and Pro when we're importing third-party model files, like STLs and OBJs and all. But the reason why I'm jumping over to Aspire is because I want to bring in more than one third-party model file. I want to bring in a second one, and I don't have it in a V3M option. So I'm going to be building a couple of models together, importing a couple of models, and probably making a couple as well. And then I'm going to show you a little fun texturing tool for creating repeated patterns. And Sylvia Klosterman, who's watching, she knows what I'm talking about. So that'll be a fun project. We're gonna kind of create a nice little cool pattern and stuff, and show you how to go ahead and do that. Right? All right. All right, we're almost done calculating. And we can, we're almost done calculating. And we can get into that more in a moment. Okay. Almost there. Cool beans. Now, and I didn't look at how long our runtime was on the first one. The first 3D cut, I saw what the rough cut was, but I didn't see the finish to compare the time. Dadgummit. That's okay. Let's go ahead and preview that finish cut. Now, I made one screw up, and you can see it very clearly where I screwed up. Okay, right here on the edge of my border. You see that? The edge of my border right there. So when on that vector, if we zoom in, that vector goes right out on that lower one. Okay, it goes out further than you know, on that pocket cut I did, and so in my 3D view, the two don't line up, so I need to clean that up a little bit. Okay, so let's go ahead and get that cleaned up some. I'm going to do that by going into my pocket toolpath. And I'm going to create an allowance offset of a negative number. And I'm going to sneak up on it because I honestly don't know what it is off the top of my head. But I'm going to go a 30-second negative, because I want to go past the line a little bit. 0.03125. I'm going to go a 30-second and calculate that really quickly. And let's preview that. Oh, I was so close. So close. Let me look at this. All right, so on that pocket cut, I want to check off do a last pass, profile pass last, and that should take care of it. I don't know why I had that unchecked. I think I was showing somebody earlier today what that was, but I want to do a last profile pass to clean up that edge, and I'm just shy of being level, so let's go ahead and do that one more time. Let's bring it over another thousandths of an inch. Let's go 0.032. I'm gonna sneak up on it. No, that was ridiculous. Let's go 0.04. That was another 10,000ths of an inch. I meant, not 1,000th. Preview the visible toolpath. Almost there. 0.0. Oh, I know I'm going to overshoot it right now. 0.05. No, actually, let's go into a full straight-on view. Yeah, no, that's it. That's good enough. All right. So, and now let's bring our last toolpath in there, and let's look at our run times here and everything. This will be kind of first. Let's look at our run times and all. And so my pocket cut here is going to be an hour. Wait a minute, what do I have here? Bear with me a minute. My pocket cut, how see what my pass depth is on my pocket cut here. Bear with me a second. Oh, let's change that. 1/8 of an inch. I was wondering, I was like, why is that taking so long? Let me recalculate that. I don't need to take a 1/16 of an inch per pass. Okay, my pocket cut's going to be about 35 minutes to bring this down to its, based on my speeds and feeds, guys. Going to bring that down to its final depth. My rough cut is going to be 2 hours and 58 minutes for that rough cut toolpath. Let's make sure that on that rough cut toolpath that I am doing a Z level raster. Very good, along the X. Great. And then my finish cut is going to be the longest one. It's going to take about 8 hours with my bit. And then my VCarve about 7 minutes. So all together on my job, on this job here, for me and my toolpath speeds and feeds, if you're on a big commercial machine, you can run hundreds of inches a minute, right? You know, and things like that. On mine, can't, right? I have a 2440 that has a rapid rate of 150 inches a minute and stuff. So we are at a total runtime of about 12 hours versus if we went back and let me find my, let me move this out of the way for a minute. There we go. Versus if I did a selected vector, calculate. Let that calculate one more time and then we'll move on. Do y'all remember what the time was? All right, we'll let that calculate. And I want to calculate the other toolpaths and we'll kind of do a time comparison. Before I do a time comparison, let me go back in and write down that time here. So we are at 12 hours, 25 minutes. Okay, so let's calculate that. Okay. Let's calculate this one. Come on now. All right, we'll let that calculate, and while that's calculating, it shouldn't take too long. We'll go back and compare the prices, or the times, not the prices. All right, we're going to jump into Aspire here. Now again, I'm going to be importing 3D models in here, and the import and orientation process is the same across the board. The only reason I'm using Aspire is because I'd like to bring in more than one third-party model file for this build. And then we'll go from there. Let's see here. Would the edge along the pocket look different since using an end mill versus the taper? Well, you're going to see that, Tony. The edge is going to be cleaner. There's with the tapered ball nose bit, there's going to be a lip on that there because it's a tapered ball nose bit, so it's not going to get right up to that edge. So there's actually going to be a lip between the rough cut and the finish cut on this recalculation. So the pocket cut actually gave me a nice straight cleaner edge and everything. I did have to do a offset allowance on that pocket cut so it blends in, but it was that was a minor allowance for that versus what you'll see when that finish is calculating. And why can't you fix with node editing? Fix what? You talking about why can't I fix that boundary with node editing? I could do that. I could absolutely do that, fix that boundary and all, but I wanted to create that allowance because I want my end mill to be able to do that profile cut and clean it up and blend it in with my 1/8 inch. I'm letting that 1/8 inch tapered bow nose has got a new vector that it's working with, so it's going to be out further than my pocket cut. So I needed that pocket cut to go outward a little bit more. That's that offset allowance, so it blends it in. If I would have done it with nodes, I could have been there just kind of fiddling with it, trying to figure out how far I needed to go and all that stuff. When we pop back over there, I'll show you what I'm referring to. When we pop back over, I'll show you what I'm referring to. But on this project here, we're going to create a new file. I'm going to be building models. So I'm going to hold my shift key down when I click on create a new file. And this board here is going to be 32 inches in length. It is going to be 11¼ inches wide. And I am going to go thick on this one. I'm going to go about 1½ inches thick on this one for this model. I'll be zeroing out on the machine bed, my wasteboard, because most of the surface is going to get milled on this. And I'll start from the bottom left corner because the center is going to get gone, is going to get milled away. So I do want to have a reference point that I can reference from in case I lose X and Y for whatever reason. I'm going to change this to an extremely high resolution, and that's going to be the job setup for this here. Our VCarve toolpath is nearly done. We'll let it finish up. But here I'm going to draw in a rectangle. We're going to start here with a rectangle. And I'm going to offset that rectangle inward, just like I did with the other one. I'm going to go in about, on this one I'm going to go, about 1.5 inch border all the way around. And from here, let's go ahead and import our first model. So I'm going to go to the modeling tab and I'm going to import a 3D model. And this is going to be a third-party model file. It'll be an STL model. I'm going to import a model, and we're going to start with this one here. And the first thing that occurs is I have to orientate and size this model to fit my material. Okay, this is a 3D two-sided model. I'm going to be just using one side of it for this design, for this project, but I have to orientate it properly. Number one, it's not orientated correctly. It's orientated based on the way the creator created it. So I need to orientate it for my needs. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I want to see the right, or the left side, actually, the left side of it. Okay. And then I need to rotate it 90 degrees. So I want to rotate it not that direction. I want to rotate it that direction. Okay, now that I have that, I need to come in and size it to fit my project. Now this project is 85 inches long and my board is only 36. So, and I just offset a border in there that was 1.5 inches, right, on both sides. So that's 3 inches. So I'm around 33 inches is my inside area. So I don't want to be right up against the inside area, so I want to be at least under 33. I think I'm going to go 27 inches in length. And click apply. And then I'm going to center that model within my material, looking at my red boundary here. That's my board and everything. And I believe that will be suffice. So now that I've sized it the way that I want, and I've got it centered, so meaning centered, that zero plane, guys, it's split right down the middle here. This is split right down the middle. And so on this, I need to, that's what I want. I'm cutting half of it off because I'm just using the top half and all. But coming back into this full view here, you see this light blue area. This light blue area is below my zero plane, right? So what I need to do is I need to, lower my zero plane slightly to raise that model up. This is what it looks like. Your model's kind of faded and everything. And that light blue actually is not. In other models, that's what that means. But this is actually part of the model. I forget, it's a taper. But I want this you know, I don't want to be all the way above my zero plane. Let's get into the Y view here. I don't want to be all the way above my zero plane, which is this faint gray line you see right there. It's a black line for you guys and girls that have a non-black background. I don't want to be too low below my zero plane. I want to be right in the middle. So I want to split that center there. And I want to just make sure that above my zero plane that my parts are all there. And there are some parts that blue is throwing me off because blue means that it's below the zero plane in some cases. I am going to raise it up just a little. So I'm going to drop my zero plane down just a little bit from center. That's good. And then I want to discard everything below that zero plane because I'm only going to use it as a one-sided model. Let me look at this straight on, make sure I got all the detail that I want in here. Yes, so I'm going to click OK to discard everything below that zero plane so that when it brings it in, you know, I have the model as I want it. Okay. Now, in this model, one of the things I do like about Aspire is, you know, I could use clipping to get rid of this bullet. I don't want this bullet in here. I could use clipping, again, on layers if I was in Desktop or Pro and I was importing a model like this and I had that stray bullet there that I don't want. But in this case, I can actually create a boundary around my selected model. I can create a vector boundary around my model. And when I do that, it creates this boundary as well. Well, I'm going to ungroup these two vectors, and I'm going to delete this one. I don't want that vector. This is the boundary that I want, this outside perimeter. Here, here. And make sure it goes all the way around. I want everything covered here. Here, and here. And I'm going to use a tool that's called Clear the area of the selected model that's outside the vector boundary. So when I do that, first of all, I got to select the model. When I do that, when I clear that away, it should delete that, that bullet there. Okay, so I just have, you know, just this. Now, the one thing that looking at this, when I imported in the size, I didn't take into account how tall it was and stuff and all. So no big deal. I can still size it while, you know, while I'm here. But I do want this to fit within this boundary on my board and everything. So I will go ahead and let's deselect that outside border. I will go ahead and size this down. I'm going to hold the Shift key and size that down to a more appropriate size. And let's bring it over here. Right about there. Okay. So I've got that model in there. All right. So now, guys and girls, this is a model, right, of a gun. If you don't like guns, it's not a real gun. It won't hurt nobody. It's a model, so stick with me. Even if you're not in guns, we're learning about modeling and stuff, and it just happens to be the design I'm working with. So hopefully all that stuff is good because it's a model, right? It's on a computer screen. All right, we're gonna bring in our second model this time, and the process is going to be the same. In our modeling tools, we're going to import, and we're gonna bring in our next model. And when we import the model, we have to orientate it again, just like before. Okay. So I'm going to first make sure I'm in the Z view, right? I want to be able to make sure like I'm looking from the top of my board down and stuff. I want to, you know, import that and make sure I'm looking there. And I am. Now, if you notice, let's see if we can kind of zoom in down here or move this over. You see this little red box right there? That little red box in the corner? That's my board. This thing came in millimeters. It's 355 millimeters by 370. It came in millimeters, but it's kind of reading in inches, right? So the first thing I need to do is I'm going to click this button to scale from millimeters to inches. And that's going to reconfigure this into inches. And this model is actually 14 by 14 and it's square, right? Well, again, my border, my board is only 11 and a quarter. I think it was 11 and a quarter, yeah. And I lost 3 inches of that with that boundary, that border I put around it. So I need to be, you know, within that 8 and a quarter inches and stuff like that. So let's get this size down. Let's go, I'm going to go 7.5 and click apply. And I'm going to center my model. Okay. And now I'm going to take my zero plane on this one, and I'm going to slide it all the way down. Now, when I look at this in a side view, the Y button up here, you can't see it on my screen because of the black screen, but on my model here, this model happens to have its own little plane of kind of a rough torn flag or paper or whatever it is, you know, background and all. And so the model, parts of the model are behind that, right? And so what I have to be careful of, if I do decide to cut off some of that model by sliding this up, I have to make sure that when I look at this in a straight on view, that Z view in this orientation, that I'm not losing any of my model. You know, I'm not like cutting it out. Now this back area here is what I'm most concerned about because it's at the lowest level. So if I lowered my model too much, you know, in here, all that blue area, the light blue, is above my model. All the purplish kind of a not lavender, it's kind of a light purple, whatever, in my screen, it's below that zero plane, right? And I lost it. If I import it in, it's gone, right? So I need to make sure that I'm at least below my zero plane enough on this particular one. 99% of the time, we're just sliding that slide bar all the way down. But I want to bring this up and I want to make sure that at least, you know, I'm getting some of this background here. So that's going to be good for this. I'll go ahead and click OK. And we'll look at the model. When it imports, that'll really tell me what it looks like when it imports in. And it'll tell me if I brought in too much, too little, too late, that kind of thing. All right, let's get this into position here. And we'll, you know, come in here. Now, if I look at this in the 3D view, okay, if I look at this in the 3D view, I've got kind of this smooth surface here, and then it's starting to tear. It's crinkling and it's tearing and everything as this eagle's coming through, right? And so I know that right now I haven't created my background model yet, right? So I know that this stuff here is going to kind of blend in and disappear, right? You're only going to see the rippling of everything else when I bring in my other model and stuff and I merge the two together, or when I design the other model. But if not, I could, in Aspire, I could kind of create a boundary around this area here and just remove everything else with the button that says, you know, clear area outside of selected vector. I could clear it all out. But I don't need to do that right this minute, okay? Because I've still got some more modeling to do. All right, let's go back into our 2D view. And yes, when we looked at this, the eagle model wrapped around the silencer of this gun, right? Okay, around the can. And so it's because it is adding, remember that sheet draping over? So I'm going to go ahead and right now, while I'm in here, I'm going to go ahead and change that to a merge so it blends together with it, you know, so it blends in. And while I'm at it, I will leave it at that. All right, so it just kind of merges in there. Now what I need to do is I need to go ahead and build the rest of my model. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start with this rectangle here, and we're going to go into the Create Shape tool. Now these functions, now that I'm building shapes, importing, Desktop, Pro, Aspire, same thing. Import, orientate, bring it in. Then create your, size it, whatever you got to do, bring your tool, create your toolpaths. Now I'm building models. This is an Aspire feature. So here we go. I want a flat background, and I want to give it some meat. So I'm going to have a base height of about 1/4 inch. And I'm going to click apply. All right. Now, if we look at this, okay, I've added this in, and it's kind of an add feature right now. I built it up 1/4 inch and everything. So if I merged it with my model, right, then now it's, my model's sinking into it, right? And that's kind of what I want. I want to merge this one. It looks weird, right? But I'm going to raise my other two models up. I'm going to give them the proper amount of base height to raise them up above this, so I only get the detail that I want, especially in the eagle. Okay, so I do want this merged. All right, I don't want it as an add, I want it merged. All right, so let's close that. So I've got this boundary here. Now I'm going to, on this rectangle, this outer border here and this inner border, I'm going to create another model, another shape. So I'm going to create this shape, and this one's going to be full on the full border here. And it's going to be, I think my material was 1.5 inches, right? So I'm going to bring this up. I want to be able to skim off some of that material. So I'm going to bring this up 1.25 inches. So my base height is going to be 1.25, and it's going to be a flat shape. And again, I want this to merge with the others. Okay, so I'm going to click apply. All right. All right. All right, give me a shout out. Let me know you're still with me, that you're not falling asleep yet. We're kind of getting through this. We've got a little bit more to go. I promise you we're almost done kind of with the designing, and there's a few cool things that we're going to do and have some fun with it. So let me know you're still with me. All right, let's take a look at what we've created so far. And so now we have this big border on here, right? Everything looks kind of like sunk in right now. Well, we're not done with it yet, right? We still got to raise up some things and all that good stuff and everything. I'm just putting all the components together right now. Then I'll go back and tweak them accordingly. All right, let's do one more shape here, but this time I'm going to pull from the Clipart library. Now my Clipart library, I have what's called texture area tiles. And in these texture area tiles, my head's in the way, so let me move over to the right side. Ooh. Okay. So now when I'm looking at my screen, it looks like I'm looking away from my screen, but I promise you I'm looking at my screen and I'm looking at you, right? So we'll make eye contact. But over here, I have these texture area tiles where I can do some pretty cool things with them. I can create full sheet tiles or texture areas with them and have some fun. Well, what I'd like to do is I'd like to come here to this diamond plate model. And I'd like to drag this in and throw this up here. Okay, actually, let's drag it down to the bottom down here. Okay, and all right. Now I want to go ahead and let's size this down appropriately. All right, to whatever, whatever size I want that would look, decent, what have you and stuff. And I want to create an entire sheet of this diamond in an actual diamond plate, the diamond plate pattern, all the way across my entire board here. Okay. So we have a tool, a very cool tool that very seldom gets used up here on our top row of tools called create a texture area component. And this tool works hand in hand with our Clipart texture area tiles. Okay? And our texture area our texture fill tiles, but our texture area tiles. Those texture area tiles and the tool create texture area. Those go hand in hand. Okay? And all that good stuff. So what I want to do is I need to create that diamond pattern. So when I create this pattern here on this model, I got to create the proper amount of spacing, both on my X and Y. I got to create the right amount of offset and things, and I also got to create the right orientation, of these things. They got to turn and twist the proper orientation. So on my spacing here, this model, I've got to decide when the next one comes in, how far is it going to space? Is it going to space, half of it, a third of it? What's it going to be? And in this case, we're going to go 33.3%, right? A third of this full model is what our spacing is going to be. So we'll go 33.3%. Okay. All right. And then we're going to go another, on the Y, we're going to go 33.3%. Okay. 33.3. Now, let me get my 3 working there, 33.3. Now, this is not correct up to this point. There's one other thing that we have to do to one of these, but I want to go ahead and create, or I want to apply this so you can see what we've done so far just by putting in that step over a third, step up a third on your texture tile. So let's go ahead and let's just click apply here, and let's create this texture tile. And right now we have all we've done is we've created, let's go into the 3D view for this. No, let's stay in the 2D view for a minute, because the 3D view, we've got it merged. We'll have to fix that in a minute. But right now, there's no orientation. If you know the diamond plate, we have one that goes this way, one that goes this way, one that goes that way, and they're kind of twisted and turned. But also at the same time, on my spacing here, I stepped one over 33% and one up 33%, but one of them needs to step back a little bit. Okay? One of them needs to step back a bit. Now, let's figure out which one needs to step back. First thing I need to do is I need to make a shift on one of these. Every other row needs to shift in one direction or the other, either up or down along the Y or along the X. Okay? Now, if you guys experience any buffering, I am experiencing a little bit of a drag on my internet right now. And so we might get some buffering. If Mary Beth is on the internet, we'll have her get off. All right. Stand by, ladies and gentlemen. Some buffering is occurring. So let me see if I can get that my stream health back up. I don't know if it's the storm, but my internet just dropped dramatically. Stand by. Yes. Yep. Stand by. I don't know if a storm has hit or something, but I've lost a major chunk of my internet. So we're going to pause just for a moment. Okay. Okay. So let's see if we can get back to where we were without buffering, and see if that helps out. Okay. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. It's building back up. I'm not sure what happened, but my internet stream rate is coming back. Okay. Lord have mercy. All right. So, like I was saying before we were interrupted by buffering, is that I've got my pattern across here and I've got my spacing and all, but they're not orientated properly. So we need to do some orientation. Okay. And the reflection down here is what changes my orientation. And then on my XY shift, every other row, either X or Y, will shift a certain amount depending on what I choose, right? And so the one thing that I want to do is first of all, let's get our orientation right. So every other row, I need to be facing the other direction. Okay, every other row I need to be facing the other direction. So I'm going to click on both my Y and my X here, and I'm going to have it facing the opposite direction, or the the same opposite direction, yeah, from each other. And I'm going to apply that pattern and everything. And now you'll see, now we've got our orientation, right? But we still don't have the correct offset for our pattern. We're still not there yet, right? We're still not there yet. We need to, we've got a pattern somewhat going along, but we don't quite have it yet. So one of the things that we need to do is we need to shift. Now, on my shift, it's going to be my up and down, right? So I need every other row, every other model, I need one to go up, right? And then back down, and then up and down, up and down. I need to shift it up. How far do I shift it? I'm going to shift it by half the size of that model. So I'm going to go up. I don't want to go over anymore. No shift on the XY, but no shift on the X, but I do want to shift kind of up on the Y. And I want to go half my model. So I'm going to go 50%, right? And let's click apply, and we'll get that shift, right? Almost there, right? Our pattern's coming along, but in a diamond pattern, if we zoom into this, these guys that are shifted the other way from we have one that's coming like this and we have one that's coming like this. The positioning it's in the center, right? And if you notice where this point is pointing, it's pointing down here. It's not quite there, right? And that's because on my spacing here, that spacing I did on the X, I need to go backwards the other way, right? So it needs to be negative. It needs to be a negative 33.3%. And I want to put that 0.3 in there. Let's see if I software will allow me to get my 0.3s and 0.3s, and I want to click apply. And that's, let it get there. Okay. That's kind of the diamond plate pattern that we, know and love, and everything, for the most part, right? That's the diamond pattern that we're familiar with, that pattern on those diamond plate textures and things. And so we've got the pattern here, this diamond plate and everything, going across our whole board. Well, we're not going to we're not going to have it go across the whole board. We got to clear out some of that model, that component. So let's go ahead and we have merged it in with our model. In the case of this, I'm gonna have to give it some base height because it's got to go up above the top, right around the edge and all. And so we had to, long story short, is we had to go negative 33.3% to bring the every other row back a third of that model. We had to bring it back. We had to go 33.3% up, a third of the model up to get that position. And then we needed to rotate the parts so they were properly orientated. And then we needed to actually step up a little bit higher by 50% in the model. We need to go just a little bit higher to get that pattern. Okay, so that is pretty much our negative 33, our positive 33. No shift on the left to right on our x-axis, but we did a 50% shift on the y, and we orientated every other row to flip itself, be backwards from the orientation, that, every other row it's going to flip. So that creates that pattern. Now that we have that pattern, we need to, on that texture pattern that we have, we need to come in and, first of all, let's do a little bit of organization and everything, and let's name our components a little bit. So on our component, this component here, that's that diamond pattern, component number 3. Let's turn it back on, and let's call it our, let's right click and rename this and call it our diamond plate. All right, the model that was that surface plane outside border here, that was our border, so we'll rename that to our border. The other component was the back, the bottom end, the base, let's call it the base, rename that to the base. And then our eagle, we'll just go ahead and rename that to our eagle. And then our gun to our AR-15. All right. Now, some of you said that I'm very interested in the models you imported, Big Daddy Fish, cgtrader.com. You can, very inexpensive to purchase these 2 models from cgtrader.com. Okay, I can't provide them and all that because they're not my models. I purchased them. I can demonstrate, I can show them, I can work with them, but I can't give them away to you guys and girls on this one. cgtrader.com is a great place to find models, and that's where you would find these too. Okay. All right. So now, now that we have our models named properly and everything, I'm going to select the diamond plate model here, and I'm going to hold down my shift key and select the boundary right here. Now I have a choice. I could create the diamond plate in the inside of the model or around the trim of the model. Okay. I could, instead of this model merging, I could create an add to where the diamond plate actually folds in to the model, right? Where it kind of combines and folds into the model. So it's like the whole thing would be made of diamond plate. Let's look at our 3D view here, and let's look at what some of our options are. So number one, right now in my properties on this model, I am merging with the other models. So that's why you see all those green little dots, right? They're merging. And so if I came in here and I added this, let it revamp that. Okay. It would be adding, right? It would be adding and everything into that. And, you know, kind of wrapping around. And of course, it's adding to my gun and the Eagle as well, the AR-15 and the Eagle as well. You know, I don't want that. Also, you can see that it's like paint dripping on the edges over here, where it's just running down the edge and all that. I don't want that. If I do something like this where I have the diamond plate down below and above, then I'm going to do some clipping. I'm going to create duplicates. I'm going to do some clipping to get rid of some areas and others and all, right? I would clip to this border so it doesn't run down the edge like dripping paint. And then I would clip to the inside border on this one so I have the back and all that, and I just wouldn't have it on the inside rim, right? I can't get it to fold on the inside rim. It just wants to drip down that inside rim, right? So I have to make some kind of sacrifices, right? So I may just want the diamond plate around the border, the outer edge. So if we did that, I would take my selected model, I would take the border here, and I would remove or clip, right? If you were in a 2D view kind of thing, or Vectric VCarve Pro, but unfortunately the diamond plate pattern, that tool to create that texture area, that's an Aspire tool. But I could clear everything inside of that border away. Okay. And all right. And so now I have, you know, just this outside rim here. Or vice versa, if I undo that, Control Z. And again, we haven't positioned our models and got them all built back up yet. Or alternatively, with that boundary selected and my model selected, I could clear everything outside of that model away. Or that boundary away. And I could create that diamond plate inside there, right? It all depends on kind of what I'm wanting to, you know, what I'm wanting to achieve. Or I could do a combination of both, right? Where I have it on top and down in the background and all that stuff, right? In this case, I'm going to do the trim. I'm going to do a different texture on the inside. Okay, so we're going to undo that, Control Z. And of course, my other models, my Eagle and all, would be on top of that diamond plate. And my Eagle would be kind of busting through that diamond plate if I had it in there, that kind of thing. And that might look pretty cool. We could probably look at that in a minute when we get everything laid out and stuff, right? You know, we can kind of figure those things out in just a moment. All right, so let's first let's come in here to our 2D view, select our vector, which is there, and select our diamond plate. And this time I'm clearing everything inside of that vector away, right? I'll just have it on the trim for now. Okay, now on the Eagle here, this Eagle, around these dark areas and stuff, you know, like I said, I've got this square boundary and everything. So let's look at our 3D view and let's kind of focus on our Eagle for a minute. I'm going to go into the properties of the Eagle and I'm going to start giving it base height. I'm going to start raising it up. I want to see that little bit more of that tearing and everything. So I'm going to give it some base height. And so I'm going to start off with a 1/16 of an inch. 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 1/16 Okay, let's go with a 1/8 of an inch. Okay, a little bit more. Let's go 1/4. We'll jump up a full 1/4. Okay, and let's bring that back down to 0.2322. Okay, now as I start getting in here and everything, as I start bringing this down now, let's go down to 0.20. I need to be mindful of my tears and all that stuff. I need, I'm starting to lose a little bit of the ripple right here. You can see the green, it's starting to disappear, right? All these green areas are like my model's disappearing, but yet this square border, that's one thing I don't like about this model is, I'm trying to bring it down. Let's go 0.18. So it blends in with this surface, but by doing that, I sacrifice some of my detail, I'm still, if I come in here and click on this, I still got a square ring around here, right? And everything. So I'm going to bring it down a little bit more. Let's go 0.16. All right. And, I've now brought everything down to this high rise, right? So now, when I click off that and I look at this, I still got the effect of the tearing, right? But I lost a little bit of the bubbling and rippling over here, on this side and everything. And so I want to take it one step further. I want to come in here on my eagle here, and I want to go into the 2D toolpath, and I want to trace bitmap this thing. And I'm going to do a black and white trace on the model, and of course, make sure you got the right model selected. I'm going to do a bitmap tracing, and I'm going to slide this slide bar, in one direction or the other until I get some of the detail that I want, but that's too far, right? I don't want that white square, right? So I need to back this off just a little bit. And again, kind of fighting, I'm losing the battle here a little bit, with this. The more I'm losing those ripples. I kind of want those ripples and stuff in there as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end up having to freehand this a little bit, but let's bring this back to 9, right about there. And I'm going to preview this tracing, right? I'm creating these vectors. Okay. Now, on this vector here, let's go ahead and ungroup it. And first of all, I'm going to get rid of this rectangle that's on the outside. This rectangle here. And I'm going to delete that. And I want a little bit more of this rippling that's over here. So what I'm going to try to do my best with, and all I really care about is this border. I don't care about all this other junk right here. All this other junk and trash, it can get deleted for all I care. All I care about really is, this border here. But I'm not going to sit there and try to node edit this thing all the way around or anything crazy like that. So what I am going to do is I will do a little bit of node editing up here. I'm going to take these guys up here and I'm just going to bump them down some out there. But I'm now going to take my curve tool and I'm going to draw a curve kind of around to here. Spacebar to finish that. Let me look at the 3D view for a minute. And let me bring my model back up to the properties of my model, the eagle. Let me bring that back up to, oops, wrong direction. Back up to here. I just want to see where this stippling stops. So right around that edge. Okay. So this edge is catching a pretty decent amount of that stippling over here. Let's go to a split view. And let me zoom in to both of these areas. This one here and this here that I'm working with. And so this is catching a pretty decent amount here. On the side, I want to come out just a little bit more. And at the top, I definitely want to grab more of this tear, this V right here. So let's take and let's go into node editing. And I'm going to cut the vector right here. And all the way down to the other end of the line, I'm going to cut the vector right here. And I'm going to delete all that squiggly line that's on the left side there. I'm going to hit the delete key and get rid of that. I might as well, while I'm in here, I might as well select all this trash as well. Delete that and that and that. And let's get rid of some of this trash that's down here. And let's create another curve. Actually, let's just take, we'll create the curve all the way around. We'll draw our own curve instead of really worrying about the border. So let's kind of come, I want it to look somewhat organic. So I want some curvature. Yeah, I should have just done this to begin with. And I'll snap it to there. All right, so I'll take my scissors and trim away this vector in here. And that should be that. I can get rid of these vectors in here. I don't need any of those that are on the inside. I don't want to get rid of any of those models. So I can just delete everything inside that boundary. And now I'm going to select this boundary. This would be my clipping boundary if I was in VCarve Pro or a desktop. This would be my clipping boundary. But in this case, let me join this together as a... Let me find my... It's open somewhere. Right here. Okay, so this would be my clipping boundary, but now it's going to be my clearing boundary. I'm going to select my model with that boundary, and in the modeling tools, I'm going to buffer again. There we go. I'm going to clear everything outside the selected component away. Okay, I'm going to get rid of everything that's on the outside of that selected component. Okay, now I can start to blend. Okay, I can start to blend a little bit better. I'm not going to get it perfect, but then I have in Aspire, I happen to have sculpting tools that I can kind of smooth things out. So let's go ahead and let's get back into the properties of the eagle. I just wanted to get rid of that square, right? So now back in the properties, let's go ahead and start bringing this down a little bit. Not too much. Where we start to blend a little bit here. I don't want to, again, you know, as the more I bring it down, the more I start to lose detail in these areas right here. So I got to be careful about that. So my only option, let's go 0.21. I want to get this back in here. 0.23. Okay, I can live with that. I can live with that as far as that goes. When you have it selected and it's red, it kind of throws you off with that red and green. Let me bring this back to 0.21. That red and green, you know, it's like, oh man, I can really see that standing out. But when we have it deselected and it's kind of blending, we can start to see, you know, things a little bit clearer. So I want that tear at that V. That's kind of my main thing, and I do want this. So what I am going to do on this is the final adjustment. I am going to make this a 0.225. That's as far as I'm going to go. That should bring some of my stippling back down here at the bottom. That's enough. Okay, and then I'm going to come in and I'm going to turn off all my other models except for the base and the eagle. They're going to stay on, but I'm turning off the AR-15, the diamond plate, all that stuff here. So all I have are these two things visible, and I'm going to go into my, I'm going to select both of these, and I'm going to go into my sculpting tool. Now when I open my sculpting tool, it's going to say, hey, you need to bake these components before you can sculpt them. And I do not want to bake my original components. So I'm going to hit cancel. I want my original components so they're separated so I can change them if I need them. So what I do need to do in this case is just like we did with our VCarve Pro design is I need to insert a new level. And I'm going to select these two models here, my base and this. And I'm going to hold the control key down and drag a copy into that other level. Now this copy, I can bake those two together as long as I have my originals intact down here. So I'll turn off my originals and I'll go into my sculpting tool, and when it asks me to bake, I'll be fine with that. Okay. Could you tilt the eagle? Yes, I could tilt and I could fade, but I can only tilt and fade in one direction. Okay, I can only tilt and fade in one direction. So in my sculpting tool, let's go in here and kind of zoom into this. In my sculpting tool, it's going to ask me to bake my model. I'm okay with that. And when you're in sculpting and all, trying to move your model around, that's called twiddle. I don't know why it's called twiddle, but you're twiddling your thumbs, twiddling your view, right? So if I need to move my view around, I'm twiddling the view, right? All right, I just think that's funny. Okay. So in this case, I'm going to do some smudging and I'm going to do some smoothing. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do some smoothing. And I'm going to, on my strength, let's bring it back down to about 75. My diameter, let's go a little bit bigger here. And let's see what happens when I smooth, you know, one thing into another. You know, can I get some, you know, some kind of blending to where it doesn't look too terrible? Can I get some kind of blend there? Yes, but not to my liking. So I'm going to go to the undo, and I'm just going to wipe my mouse right over what I just did, and it'll undo it. Okay, and I'm going to use some smudging here. Smudging means that I'm going to be kind of pulling, you know, some of the model out. You know, I'm kind of just smudging this, and I'm pulling this out to kind of create kind of a rough edge. So it's not so symmetrical and everything. I want it to look like, you know, the paper's just kind of warping up, and you know, your direction of your smudge is going to be kind of, you know, dependent on what you're doing or what you're trying to achieve. And If I get too high in some areas, I do have where I can remove material and stuff. But right now, I'm just kind of smudging some of this out. And I got to be careful now. Let's twiddle the view, right? Let's twiddle the view. When I start smudging, and let me do an undo brush on this area right here. When I start smudging and things, I got to be careful that I'm not grabbing my other model and smudging it, right? Don't want to do that, okay? So we got to be careful of that, all right? So what I want to do is if I am going to kind of smudge this around, I need to be smaller in my diameter, right? So if I'm going to be kind of pulling this around and stuff. All right, I'm still in the undo brush, not the smudge. I was wondering, why is it undoing everything I just did here? So if I'm going to be kind of pulling this stuff out, I need to make sure that, you know, I'm not pulling my model. So I don't want that purple thing anywhere near my model. And then once I get a little bit further away, I can start to kind of increase my smudge a little bit. And let's twiddle the view again. I love that term. Let's twiddle the view so we can kind of see what's happening here. You know, let's zoom in, get on this. All right. We'll smooth some of this smudging out in a minute, but let's continue working our way around. Let's continue working our way around and kind of pulling this out and everything. You know, we're just kind of pulling it out. I could go in there and add little deposits. I could add more stippling. I could, you know, pull in some more, or, you know, put in some more stippling by using the deposit tool. You know, I could come in here and start depositing material, you know, depending on my strength. I could start adding on more, you know, stippling if I needed to, you know, whatever the case may be if I needed to. Let's undo that. I'm not ready to do any stippling yet. So I'm going to just kind of start grabbing this and I'm just kind of pulling it out. Almost there, guys. I promise you, where it's not going to be too much longer. I just want to get this eagle kind of blended in, and then we'll work from there. Okay. So now that I have this, now I'm going to take my smoothing tool and I'm going to see if I can kind of, you know, if I start smoothing this out, if I can start kind of blending it together. Now you see what I did down there? I'll undo that in a minute. But what I'm doing now is I'm smoothing that smear out so it just kind of looks like the paper's a little bit puffy right there or whatever it busted through. I'm just kind of smoothing that out around that edge so it's not so rough. I just want a nice little blend where this thing is just popping through, right? So it's kind of smoothing that out. Now over here where I kind of did this, I don't want that. So I want to undo my brush and I want to undo that, okay? And if I'm going to smooth that, I need to make sure that I'm working with a small enough brush that, you know, get my edges. All right? Okay. All right, now that we have that, I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And I could go in there and I could really just add some more stippling to it if I needed to and all, but I'm going to be happy with this. This will be fine for now. And I'm going to come back in and I'm going to turn on my diamond plate. I'm going to turn on my border and my AR-15. And I'm going to zoom out so we can see the whole project here and all. And, you know, we just got, you know, this eagle. And I could go in and I could really start to, I mean, I could, you know, start to stipple this more to make it look a little bit more like it's like the rest of it. So it's not just so puffy here. I could do a lot of work on this and I could spend a lot of time. We don't have that kind of time tonight, but you get the idea, right? And everything. And plus, I'm going to be adding a little bit of a texture to this background that might help obscure some of this a little bit. All right. So hopefully you kind of, you know, get that. Because right now it looks a little rough around these edges and all. And I could smooth this out even more and kind of really get it to start to disappear. I could add some stippling in there, like it's just like busting through a little bit more. There's a few things that I could do. Now that I've kind of done this, you know, I could take on my eagle and, you know, that, not, no, I can't because it's part of the base. Never mind. I could say, I was about to say, I could kind of bring that base down a little bit, but it's all, now from here, it would be all, sculpting. Sculpting is the word I'm looking for, to kind of get things to, you know, blend in and all. All right, let's go ahead and let's click off of this, and you know, we can kind of see there's still some things that need to be done around here, but let's see if we add in some more texture in the background, if we can get that to kind of blend a little bit better, right? So let's go to our clip art. Let's go to our clip art, and this time I'm going to look at my texture non-tileable here. And I'll also look at my texture fill area here and see if there's anything that really tickles my fancy, you know, and stuff as far as creating another textured pattern. You know, there might be like a wood plank, what have you, or, you know, it could be something. Just so you know, like if I came in here, let me log in. Bear with me a second. I got to log into my account so it'll download that model. Sales at digitalwoodcarver.com. Okay. It didn't it wasn't my account wasn't linked, so it helps when I link it. All right, let's go back down here. There's the rock grain, and then there's the wood plank. Let's bring the wood plank in. Now, when I do this with the wood plank, it's one of those things, again, I'm going to bring it down here. And I'm going to create a tiled area, right? Now, in the case of this, on that tiled area, let's bring that over a little bit. On that texture tile area, in the case of this, I just need to step over. It's a tileable tile, so I need to step over 100%, and I need to step up 100%. And there's no shift or nothing that needs to be done there, and I can, you know, complete that plank all the way across. Did I miss something there? Oh, this tool might not let me do it. Bear with me a second. It might be the shift, no shift, 100%. Okay, so I won't use that tool for that one. I'll use my copy array tool. So I need 0 gap. This part is 6.5, 6.5, so I got to go 6.5, offset by 6.5, and I want 7 columns, 3 rows. Give it a second. Save early and save often, ladies and gentlemen. Save early and save often. I'm kind of in a holding pattern right now. So while that's thinking, let's take a pause from this and let's go back and remember when I recalculated those two tool paths and everything, we were at 12 hours and 25 minutes originally on that VCarve project, the grandpa's fishing sign. With the recalculated tool paths, we are at 14 hours with just these two. Let's add the VCarve in there. The pocket cut would not apply in this case. So we're about 14 hours and 58 minutes. So by adding in those vectors and everything, we were able to shave off from 14 hours and 58 minutes. So basically, let's call it 15 hours down to 12 hours and 25 minutes. So we were about to, take off 2.5 hours by separating and creating that pocket cut and stuff. Okay. So anyway, back to here. I might have just screwed myself. This is why you save early and save often. And you guys warned me earlier. You said, "Hey, Laney, don't forget to save early, save often," Michael Pearson said. And I didn't save this one. I just jumped right in and started talking. Because you're going to be like, "Yeah, you talk too much, Laney." And right now I'm froze up. If I click anything on here, it's going to die. Let's go ahead and turn this off. Let's close this. Exit out of VCarve Pro. And it is building. I don't know why it's complicating my life right now. It's trying to build these models and everything, but it's froze up. So it's already 10. It's 9:53. Come on, Vectric, don't let me down. We're 2 steps away from being done with this assembly. Work with me. So now would be a great time to answer some questions. If y'all have any. Oh, David Kinsey, wow. Are you saying wow? He talks a lot, or wow on whatever I'm doing on the software? Let me know. Just teasing. But there we go. There we go. All right. Okay. It's still going. Stand by. It's 50% done. I didn't need 7 columns. I only needed 5. I don't know what I was thinking, but that's okay. I'll get rid of whatever I want. So now it's building the 3 columns up, which I only needed 2 rows. I only needed 2 rows. Doom, doom, doom. And here we go. It's coming along now. Yeah, I'll check in the morning. Thanks, Jim. Have a great day. So now that we're here, let's go ahead and let's look at our 3D view real quick. And on my 3D view here, I have some gapping, right, that I really don't want. I don't want that gapping in between and stuff. So what I do want to do is I want to back this off some. So I'm going to do this. I'm not going to do it with this tool. I'm going to go ahead and click close here. And on these models and everything that are here, we'll select one at a time. Okay. So on this model here, I want to back up. So I'm just going to use the arrow keys on my keyboard to move that back until my model blends. Okay. And I could bring it all the way back to here because that's technically kind of what it's designed for. So I could have a little bit of that overlap. But I'm just going to, so if we look at it in the 3D view, what I'm going to do basically on this is I'm just going to kind of step it back a little. And that's good enough for this class. Let's go ahead and back this one up. Let that regenerate. Let's go ahead and delete the ones that we don't need. Delete this, 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 this one. Let's delete all of those. Wonderful. Let's take this one here and let's back it up some. This one here, let's back it up some. Okay, and then let's take all of these, select this, 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 and this, and I'm going to bump that up to get rid of that seam. Okay, and let's take this one, bring it back to here. This one, bring it back to here. If I would have created my gapping and everything properly when I used the tool, I wouldn't have to do that, but I went off the full distance and there's a bit of a lip there. So I need to kind of overlap those lips. We're almost done. We got one more to do right here. Okay. And I'm going to be happy with that. Let's go ahead and take all of these planks. And this boundary, hold down our shift key and select that boundary. And let's clear everything on the outside away. Let it bake. And of course, I would spend some time with this getting our seams right. And of course, I got a big gap right here. No, not really. It looks like it. All right, let's go into our 3D view. Okay. All right. So on our 3D view, let's turn on our border. This will make sense in a minute. Okay, let's get our wooden planks. Our wooden plank here needs to be, the combined mode is going to be a merge. Okay, and on the wooden planks, I'm going to start raising the base height up. Okay, let's go 0.250. All right, and on the AKAR, this will be the only one that is going to be the AR has taken on the texture, so I'm going to go with the AR. Let's kind of bring it up here. And I'm going to merge it. Change the combine mode to merge so it doesn't take on the wood grain. And I'm going to raise the properties of it up. I'm going to start raising that up. Okay. And so on that, you know, we have a design here, and probably could be a little bit more creative or a little bit more yeah, no, my transmission ended up. You guys, could you increase the height of the eagle to drop it back some, the detail? Yes, I could. Tony says, could you have increased the height of the eagle to drop the back and have some detail? Yeah, I could have increased the height of the eagle. I could have, you know, increased it much more. Mike Smith, my video is blurry. That wasn't either. Change back to your higher resolution. Let's see here. Laney is bringing the model in a certain level and depth that would have fixed the problem. Laney, by bringing the model in at a certain level or depth, would that have fixed the problem I had with the strap clips that were too tall or thin? So Sylvia Klosterman is asking, you know, by, you know, on a similar project we worked on with hers, her clips and everything were extruded. Well, the clips where the strap goes were really extruded really tall and everything. So we had to kind of eliminate those and recreate some new ones because they were just too tall. Reducing the height, the depth basically of that Z, Sylvia, you would have lost the detail in the rest of the AR. The M14, I think yours was, but you know, you would have lost the detail in it and everything. So on this, I don't want to reduce the height. In the case of this, I don't want to reduce the height and lose the detail, because if I reduce the height of the model, let's say I bring this down to a shape height of 3/8 of an inch on that, I'm sacrificing the detail, right? You know, I'm losing some of the, you know, the finer details and things like that. Not a whole lot in this case. This is a high definition model, but still it could happen. So I want to reset that back. That base height or that shape height back to the 0.97, and I want to change this to 0.36 and get back to where I was. Okay. All right. Okay, so the final thing that I want to do is, you see all this straight meat on this AR-15, all this straight meat right here and everything. There's, you know, I'm going to be using a tapered ball nose bit. So I want to make it a little bit easier for my tapered ball nose bit to carve this without, and still being able to get the detail. So last thing that I'm going to do on this model, and then we're going to wrap it up, is I'm going to turn off all the other models except for that AR. I'm going to turn off all the other models except for the AR, and I'm going to add a draft. Now, when we talked about this earlier, our draft, And this is where I can add a little bit of angle or a little bit of base meat to these things. And so because I'm using a tapered ball nose bit, I do want to add a little bit of a draft. This is an Aspire feature as well. But I'm going to go with just a very simple 15-degree draft. Let's see here. David says, check your quality by clicking on the sample 1080. That was direct to Cecil. Okay. All right. So we're almost done with the draft, and then this will be the final assembly. But basically, how do the models, the whole point of all this is, I don't care what level you are, if you're using the models that come with the software, or if you use the models that you buy at Etsy or Turbo Squid or cgtrader.com, Thingiverse, Design and Make, all these places you can buy models from and stuff. When you import these models, how do they combine? How do they blend? Are you adding one to another? Are you subtracting one from another? Are you merging the two together? So these are the things. That's all there is to modeling, is just finding out how your model interacts with the other parts of the design. Once that's done, and your design is done, 3D rough cut, 3D finish cut. If you want to optimize your toolpath and do some pocket cutting like we did before, you know, to kind of minimize your toolpath times and stuff, create some vectors around flat regions and areas and do a pocket cut to those regions. And when you hover your mouse over a particular part, it'll tell you what that depth is down here. It'll tell you what that Z depth is, so you know how deep your pockets and stuff need to go. Now, in my case, remember, if you're working off the bottom of your material, you do some math. My project is 1.5 inches thick. This part of the gun right here is 0.94 inches from 0, 0.94 inches up. So if I take my 1.5 and subtract my 0.94, I'm about 0.72 inches deep, right? That I would have to cut and everything if I did my math right. 1.5, sorry, that's wrong. 1.5, about 0.156 inches deep. 0.56 inches deep is that would be my pocket cut. So you just got to do a little bit of math. It's not that big of a deal. All right, now by adding that draft, you can see a little bit more of an angular cut here. You know, so it'll be a little bit smoother cut for my ball nose bit and things. You may like that, you may not like that. You might, you know, not like it having that angle here and all. But let's go ahead and come in, turn on our rest of our level. Our border, our diamond plate, and our wooden plank, and our eagle. Okay, bring all that in, and you can see when that wooden plank comes in, you know, it's going to eat up half of that angle, so you know, it's not that big of an angle that you think it is. Let's get our eagle in here. I got a big gap in my model right there, but I've already baked this together, so I'm not going to go undo it. And my eagle's covering up most of it, but there is a big gap right there. That would definitely show up in my project. But, you know, we've got an assembly here. The last thing that I would do is I'd put another square right here. Another rectangle right here. I would use the Create Shape tool to build that up with a flat shape. Flat shape, and I want to go, that's a quarter, I want to go 0.375. Click Apply. I want to merge it in there and click Apply. And that just gives me basically a place to put, you know, someone's name or whatever, right? So, if let's go a 1/2 inch up, 0.5, click apply, give it just a little bit of a lip and all that. Now, if I really wanted to be slick and all that stuff, I would spend probably another 30 to 45 minutes on this, not with you guys, but on my own. And I would take and bring my texture here. I'd use my sculpting tool and I would bring that wooden texture over into these smooth areas. I would do a little bit of sculpting, a little adding and subtracting, and I'd bring that texture over so to blend around this end much better, where you would couldn't even tell that there's two separate models there, that it just looks like the wood is just kind of splintered out. You know, that's all about sculpting, you know, just spending some time with it. A lot of times it's hard to do with a mouse and all, but if you're into designing and models and stuff like that, a pen and tablet really make sculpting and designing much easier. Sometimes it's hard with the mouse and all that, but use what you got, right? All right, everybody, listen. So this is just kind of just a basic class. I mean, this was a little bit more than basic in this last end, but bringing models in, combining them, and all that wonderful jazz, creating your toolpaths. Now, the last step on this is just to look at our model. Make sure that it does not exceed the thickness of our material, which is 1.5 inch thick. So in our material setup, we have an error here because the diamond plate is making it stick up that extra 0.0749. So in here, I'm just going to take my overall model. I'm going to bring this to 1.49 inches. I'm going to click apply. I'm giving myself that extra 0.010 of an inch. Click close on the tool. Gonna have the 0.010 of an inch at the top of the material, so it has to get skimmed away before that diamond plate and everything gets cut. And once I've done that, then it's a 3D rough cut. I'll use the material as the boundary in this case because it's the whole material. 1/4 inch end mill. Calculate that rough cut. And then close out of that. Finish cut. I'm going to use an 1/8 inch tapered ball nose for this. Material as the boundary because it's the whole material once again. Raster cut. Calculate the toolpath. Done, right? There's really no flat regions in here other than that little block that I just made last. But, you know, it's really not worth the time just to, you know, have a pocket cut. Just do that. So, and that's it, you know. So anytime we work with a model, 3D rough cut, 3D finish cut, that pretty much is the same process every single time. The only thing that changes is our model, right? All right, everybody. Until next time, hopefully you picked up something out of this long class. This is the longest one we've had yet. But hopefully you picked up something out of that. And maybe it'll give you an opportunity to kind of experiment, start playing with models and model assembly, and have some fun with it. All right, everybody. Until next time, have a great day.